Welcome everyone, Adam the Woo here. Today's adventure takes us back to the late 1970s when the horror genre of aquatic creatures were all the rage, and this little community is no exception. The filming locations of Barracuda took place at the downtown section of my former hometown where I moved starting in 1991 and lived for over 2 decades and come back to visit occasionally. I enjoy quirky B-list movies, and this is a good one, and it happened, a good portion of it, right over there. Let's go check it out. I'm inviting you to join me. Shall you? In 1978, the fictional place of Palm Cove was a beachside town. The reality, about an hour or so from the ocean here in downtown St. Cloud, which stood in for it. Add in the fact that this is my old stomping grounds and that I had an apartment here for a few years in this precise neighborhood, makes it a little extra exciting for me. Most of the activity took place here on New York Avenue, and down at the end there connects with 10th Street at the crossroads. City Hall, the building in front, was not there back then. That has recently been added in the last decade or so. Used to be a completely straight through thoroughfare all the way to the lakeshore. Also, these bricks are relatively kinda sorta new. They were here way back in the day, but in the 70s they were covered over with pavement, and since then have been recently resurfaced and opened up, giving it that old school ambiance once again. The sheriff, played by actor William Kerwin, his cruiser would have been parked right about there in the street. His office would have been adjacent to that. He exited the vehicle and then into this very door. And there's an interesting coincidence about him being in that movie and an older one by the name of 2000 Maniacs also filmed on this road much earlier. No connection whatsoever other than being in the same genre and that he was nearly a leading man in both. And they were separated by a little over a decade, but still is a fun fact that he happened to star in both of them in the same town, on the same street, and in Barracuda. This was his office, at least the exteriors. And my old apartment down there on the left. A 2-story building at the end of the road. Deputy Lester, seen here holding this 5-gallon water jug, also has a tie into the genre. The actor might look familiar because he was Mr. Garrett, who was watching over the hospital in Halloween 2. He would have been right here, carrying that water jug. The pattern on the ground is slightly different. Used to be Hensel's 5 and dime and 25-cent store, located right there. Still looks the same, except they've re-bricked it in a couple places. Backdrop of what was the Hunter Arms and still is the Hunter Arms Hotel is still the same. Wayne Crawford, who played the part of Mike, seen here walking out of the police station with the sheriff's daughter Liza, also was a director and filmed all of the underwater sequences. And in that scene, they were walking this direction and encountered some angry townfolk. It is neat how after 40+ years, this section pretty much looks identical. Would have been walking directly towards where I'm standing. In this fashion here. And then heard and noticed a fender bender over to the left. Nothing super dramatic or damaging, just a little bump as she backed up into his car. And that's the backdrop, and their vehicles would have been right over here in this section. You can see two of the main characters there listening into the activity. And they were next to that pole. All being watched by someone who's up to no good. Very ominous looking. The parking down here has changed a little bit since then. Automobiles are required to be a little bit off of the structure itself. When back then they would have been right up against these poles. This corner was used as well, and I am happy to report that it also has not changed. And as they continued walking, they passed by this old bank slot, this deposit slot, which has been repainted, but was also here and can be seen in the film. As displayed here, right in front of him, he's about to pass it. That is that. They were en route to the Palm Cove Medical Center, seen here, which this building stood in for, which still also has family medicine to this day. Was no window there on the far left, just some signage. And now a window has been carved out. But other than that, this was the exterior. The fictional Palm Cove Medical Center. Who knew? Also at those cross streets is the former People's Bank there on the left. Drove off through that intersection and noticed the clock on the far right at the police substation. That can also be seen when the car was parked right here from this angle. There's that clock. The historic St. Cloud Hotel was used. The interiors of this were definitely used. However, it is under a major refurbishment and none shall pass. Get a pretty good peek though in this side window. That is where the front desk was, where the clerk was telling the person checking out that they could really use their business and development around these parts. Of course, everything now has been stripped away, but this is what it did look like during the scene. And as soon as one guest checks out, another checks in. Look at that Kodak film signage. It would be hanging right there on the side of that cinder block facade there on the left. After paying close attention, I had assumed that the Palm Cove Chronicle, the newspaper building, was possibly on a set. But I have found the door to the paper in this building, backlit with an aqua green lamp to give it some nice ambiance. The giveaway is the mail slot in the door, also this circular hole to the left of the bottom door frame, and the step up, which brings us to this, the Chronicle, where you can get your news here in Palm Cove. A quaint little community, whether fictional or in real life. They both kind of have the same vibe. An urgent phone message via this payphone was being sent, and while it has most certainly been reapplied, it was either tucked into this corner or possibly this corner. Just a guess. And while it is very difficult to pinpoint where the cigarette was thrown down upon the ground because it has been repaved, but that's where it happened, and the guy was following the reporter back over to the paper where I showed a moment ago at the end of this block. The plot thickens. Nightfall starts to rear its head, even though in reality I have about another hour, and I have a little time until it's starting to drift down. The sun's starting to set, but in the film, you have to go with me or use your imagination. Nightfall has now reared its head on this beachside community. Even though the ocean is an hour away, just put yourself into Barracuda. Bring it in. With another angle of what the front of the St. Cloud Hotel used to look like versus what it does now. He was being followed down this sidewalk and across this section, down that other pathway, under those arches. Continuing towards the clock. It's also neat to see that there is this little gap between the structures that was a parking lot, and even after all these years, nothing has been built in its place. That little section between building A and B is still empty. I guess, truth be told, I'm not too far off on the timeline. The sun is really setting. Pretty close. Mike was in an awful rush to find the deputy, stopped by the sheriff's office. He had this very spiffy dune buggy type sports car pulled up right here in front of this. No sign of the deputy, so drove up to the next street, corner of New York and 10th, and took a hard right, heading towards the medical facility, but not before passing the police substation. And that window could be seen. Very sharp turn, and found Deputy Lester over there. And it was here he assured them he would call even more authorities to help for backup. And that's as much as I can tell you to stay spoiler free. Because if I give it away, this creature might have a little gnaw session on myself next time I step into a body of water. And I can't have that. You gotta keep the karma flowing away from the Barracuda. That's gonna do it for today. If you're new here, please subscribe. By doing so helps keep you in the loop and up to date on future uploads here on this channel. Taking a step further, ring that notification bell, and if you enjoyed this particular episode, give it a big thumbs up. Lets me know you care. I'll see you in the next video. The vlog is over.